But what you could see happen with this company in the next 6 to 12 months is the dividend gets cut, which would absolutely destroy the stock price. Because again, they pay out $1.40 and they only make $1. So something's got to give at some point.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us to discuss Collectors Universe's financial results for the second quarter ended December 31st, 2018. Today's call is being recorded. With us from today's management are Joseph J. Orlando, Chief Executive Officer. With that, I would now like to turn the call over to Joseph Orlando. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and welcome to today's second quarter conference call for fiscal 2018. Our board of directors has decided to reduce the dividend from $1.40 per share on an annual basis to 70 cents per share. We realize how important the dividend is to our shareholders, but we also need to take what we believe is the most responsible fiscal action and do what is in the best long-term interests of the company. This approach, in turn, is what's best for our shareholders. Our cash reserves have simply come down to a level that the board of directors is not comfortable with considering our global expansion goals.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Ryan from Sports Card Radio. That's right, we are back for another episode of the R-Rated podcast hosted exclusively on sportscardradio.com, coming at you from the Las Vegas Strip. If you move to Las Vegas, why not move right on the Strip? So that's where this podcast is coming at you today. We got a couple big topics to discuss today. My trademark phrase, nobody's going to pat you on your back but yourself. So when I saw that PSA did indeed cut their quarterly dividend in half and the stock price did subsequently tanked, figured it'd be time to get on the podcast and take a little victory lap. As the clip you heard at the very beginning of the show, that was me basically saying that if PSA ever did, that PSA would cut the quarterly dividend in the next 6 to 12 months. That was recorded on October 23rd, 2017, about 3.5 months ago. So correct prediction by your host. So we'll take a quick victory lap a little later on in the show, but I want you to settle in for a minute because what I'm about to talk about, I think this isn't going to be the only time we discuss this on the R-Rated podcast because, ladies and gentlemen, the Upper Deck Redemption website is down. And while that may not set off a whole lot of alarm bells, guys, it's been down for 3 weeks. And as a semi-professional website builder, designer myself, I can absolutely tell you that no planned maintenance takes 3 weeks. I don't care what you got going on. Not a whole lot of information predictably coming out of Upper Deck about what's going on, aside from they're doing this, quote, maintenance that is taking 3 weeks. Collectors don't have access. Like if you have a redemption, you've got to log into their website and, I think scratch off a little code and enter it on the site, and then it probably updates you there from the process. But you can't even log into the back end of the Upper Deck site now and access any redemptions that you have, any current redemptions that you want to put in. None of that is available. That's all been down for 3 weeks. Somebody on the hobbyinsider.net forum, probably the most popular hockey forum. This comes from today, February 9th. User says, I would be willing to bet money that some information was lost. It's the most likely explanation for a 3-week outage. I imagine they are frantically trying to recreate the database with information stored on internal notes and in emails. I would think recent entries would be more likely to be gone than older ones. Surely Upper Deck would store some older backups and not just the most recent. Just a hunch based on my experience. It's suspect that they have not, constantly reiterating that no information was lost. Maybe because information was lost. So that comes from the hobbyinsider.net forum. Guys, if Upper Deck website was hacked or corrupted or the database got screwed up, that would be a very big story and something we would be talking about on the R-Rated podcast. Be sure if you have any Upper Deck redemptions that you hopefully save some kind of confirmation email that they sent you. Hopefully you got one of those, or you have the actual redemption cards still yourself, because it sounds like this could be a little bit of a mess. Again, guys, as someone who's done site migrations, gone from Joomla to WordPress, transferred this database over to this hosting account, and da-da-da-da-da. 3 weeks for maintenance? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. So again, potential bombshell story coming out of Upper Deck potentially in the next couple of weeks if indeed there's a huge problem and some people's redemption information was lost or not found. But if I sound out of breath, it's because I've just finished up taking a victory lap after I correctly predicted back in October that PSA, the company, would cut their quarterly dividend and subsequently the stock price would tank. That was just about 3.5 months ago that I predicted they would do that in the next 6 to 12 months. Well, sure enough, it happened. On February 7th, PSA stock was worth $26.50 per share. The next day, investors woke up. The company posted a 1 cent per share quarterly earnings result, which is really weak. And they cut the quarterly dividend in half from 36 cents to 18 cents. During the day on 2/8, February 8th, the stock went from $26.50 all the way down to $15.92. It closed today back up at $17.65, but we've seen about a $9 per share drop, and that is massive for a $25 stock to lose $9 to $10 in one day. That is a huge drop in value. And that's exactly what I told you would happen back in October, and I predicted it would happen, and here we are. And on top of that, the coin business, which is about 60 to 65% of PSA's business, is weakening. The U.S. Mint had one of their worst years in quite a while. The China growth, that's very seasonal. The card business for PSA, the card grading, autograph authentication, slight growth. But as somebody who's obviously hosting a sports card podcast and following the business, I don't think I would bet on massive growth and opportunities coming from grading sports cards. Just a hunch. Considering sports cards themselves have been on a 8 to 10 year bull run of sorts, from the vintage market and the modern market seeing a little bit of restoration. So as somebody who correctly predicted that this company would cut their dividend and the stock price would tank, why don't I keep going with some predictions? One, they're still paying out 18 cents a quarter, and this last one they only made 1 cent per share. So they're paying out 18 cents per share, but they're only making this quarter 1 cent per share. So you tell me how that works out. If you're making $5,000 a month, but you have $15,000 in bills, you tell me what eventually is going to happen. So the company is either going to have to grow and make more money, or this dividend will have to get cut again. Really going to hinge really on the next 3 or 4 quarters, probably through the remainder of the year, on how they do. They can't keep posting 1 cent per share earnings on a quarterly basis and keep paying out 18 cents. So they're going to have better quarters. They're going to have to grow. They're going to have to hope that the coin market revives a little bit. And they're going to have to hope that sports cards and autograph authentication continues to grow, even if it's growing slowly as it is now. But they're going to have to hope that that continues. Personally, I am skeptical because, again, I believe we've been on about an 8 to 10 year positive bull run in the hobby, both on the vintage level and in certain years of the modern market. The modern market, I feel like, has been trending upward since the 2010 Bowman Steven Strasburg Superfractor extravaganza. I feel like ever since then, although slowly, the modern market has come back a little bit. So if it were me, on February 9th, PSA stock is worth $17.65. They're paying an 18-cent quarterly dividend. I would not be touching it there. They even said on the quarterly conference call that the coin submissions this third quarter are a little soft, which is not good. Not good at all. This stock price is going to go lower, barring some kind of manipulation or some kind of funky business. It's going to go lower than $17.65, and perhaps the 18 cent a share dividend that was at 36 cents a few days ago. It's in jeopardy. The entire dividend is in jeopardy if they have quarters where they only make 1 cent per share. So, very interesting stuff. Again, we predicted this on this show 3.5 months ago. It's one of the reasons maybe why you listen, and something we'll continue to monitor. A couple other quick topics here. Blowout cards often discuss website and dealer on this show. Has a new website, looks like a redesign, and looks somewhat decent, so maybe you want to go check it out. New logo, new interface, kind of looks like DA Cardwell's website, to be honest. So this is long overdue. I mean, this is a website that needed a refresh about 7 years ago. So, and of course, I think it was in April or May of last year, it was discovered that their website had been hacked. So, probably something that was in the works and part of the process after kind of that debacle over at Blowout. So, new website over at Blowout Cards. Give it a look. But one last topic. Going to be a quick show today. This comes from Sports Card Europe. Any chance you will talk about the focus of card companies on domestic collectors only? We believe that European collectors are not taken seriously. And I think that's a very valid point. And not only European collectors. I knew some kids from Australia when we first kind of started up Sports Card Radio. We even had like a little forum for it. And it was a little interactive, and maybe, 100, 200 people were kind of active on the forum maybe at any given time. And there were some kids who were from Australia who ended up coming to visit the United States and kind of drive around and kind of see the country. And they even stopped into Stockton, California. They endangered their life coming to Stockton, California, specifically to visit me because of the website. And we had lunch with the family and the really impressive family and 3 really cool kids. And we went over to Target and I bought them basketball cards. And that was a lot of fun. So I think not only do the point of me sharing that story was these kids often shared the frustration about not being able to find cards and not being able to access cards, not even if they wanted to really order these things, to really have a viable option and an affordable option to get these things to them, even from America, maybe shipped to Australia. It's hard to find this stuff, and it was very expensive. And the products that were available in Australia were kind of the lower end, cheaper stuff, and not a whole lot of quantity available. So not only do people from Europe, but Australia and frankly probably any other country outside the United States and Canada are facing these problems. The card companies don't put enough time into it. I think it's probably twofold. One, we've talked about it many times on this show about the lack of motivation, the lack of talent at these card companies. They really rely on kind of a dwindling dealer network of independent shop owners, independent group breakers to sell this stuff for them. They kind of live and die by this stuff. And these group breakers who will, break even on cases upon cases upon cases just to kind of keep the doors open and keep the customers happy. Shop owners who their whole life is their shop. That's their life. That's their job. That's how they spend their time. That's their network of friends. So these card companies, there's not a Panini flagship store. There's not a Topps flagship store. There's not an Upper Deck flagship store. Their websites are very limited in terms of what you can buy direct from these sites. Another reason why they maybe don't focus on the international business is because it is very expensive if you make money overseas. And that money goes into an overseas bank account. And then you hit the transfer button over to your United States bank account. That is taxed at a pretty high rate, or it was. I know it's since been lowered by the recent legislation that was passed by the Congress and signed by the president. What do they call it? The repatriation of this money. I mean, Apple's got like a fucking $1 trillion sitting overseas. Google has a fucking $1 trillion overseas. That's why these guys' headquarters are in Dublin or whatever, or these kind of tax favorable countries. Because they have all this money parked overseas that if they brought it back over to the United States, it'd be like getting, they'd get a 40% haircut off of it. I don't know what it is now. You'd have to look into the tax law. I believe that it's less. So perhaps the recent tax legislation that got passed in the Congress and signed by the president, perhaps you could see a card company like Topps or certainly Panini that already has a big overseas presence or a bigger overseas presence than they do here. Maybe they make a play at getting some distribution overseas. And that's obviously another one of the challenges is distribution. Do they have, there's about 50 group breakers, people who are willing to go live on some kind of streaming site to open, a case of cards that they already bought and paid for? How many card shops are there? I know there's a lot less than there was back in the 90s, but brick and mortar in general has dwindled. But there's got to still be, I don't want to put a number on it, but 200 to 500 shops, quote, hobby shops still open. You have Targets and Walmarts, kind of these huge big box stores in the United States that unless you're in like a huge city, it's pretty easy to find a Walmart and a Target. And usually, most of the times, I know the one in Vegas, I don't think the Walmart in Vegas has cards, or the Walmart I go to has cards. I've never seen them. But most Target and Walmarts have an aisle of retail offerings of cards and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and stuff like that. What is the distribution setup in Europe and Australia and these places? I'm sure they have, the equivalent of a Walmart and Target, and maybe or these kind of convenience stores and stuff, newsstands. But what would be how would these cards get sold? And what would be kind of the network of dealers? And that's hard. That's a challenge. That's a big, big challenge. And that's not something I think anybody working at Panini, Topps, or Upper Deck is up to right now. I mean, Upper Deck, it looks like, can't even fucking keep their database of redemption straight. Panini doesn't even know if Dak Prescott signed his cards or not. They're still trying to fucking figure that shit out. Topps, I mean, kudos for putting on a nice party with Hank Aaron, but you fucking stamped all the cards in the silver packs 1 of 1. So it's hard. So it seems nice. And trust me, I would personally love to see an overseas growth. And I don't care what country it's in, whether it's Europe, the Asian countries, Australia, it doesn't matter, Zimbabwe, doesn't matter to me. I would love to see kind of an overseas growth in any of the sports. It could be soccer. It could be the mainstream American sports. But that's a huge problem. And again, some of these sports are only popular, or really nichely popular in America, especially American football. It doesn't have a huge following outside the United States. Baseball, a little bit. I don't know about in Europe, how stoked they are about baseball. Basketball certainly is the most worldwide out of all of them, and maybe is the most widely collected sport out of all the major sports from a worldwide perspective. So good question there. It's something that is a challenge. And I would encourage anybody over in Europe who is interested in it, and maybe the Sports Card Europe probably knows some other collectors and people interested in the hobby. Somebody should become a dealer over there, honestly. And even on a small scale, maybe if it's a box here, box there, somebody's got to start the distribution train overseas, over in Europe, Australia, those countries, that there is interest. Again, I've met some of these people before who are interested in sports cards from other countries. But that's all we got on the R-Rated podcast. Hope you're doing well. Everything's going well out here in Vegas. I'm setting up kind of a Vegas-centric website since I figure I'll be out here for a few months. And weather's been just spectacular. Eating way too much good food. Probably put 5 pounds on in the last couple of weeks. Gotta try to tighten up the game. Maybe hit the gym once or twice, but that's hard to do with all the distractions available in Vegas. But congratulations to Eagles fans. I know they won the Super Bowl. That was a fun game to watch. Congratulations to the 49ers fans. Mr. Undefeated, never lost, Jimmy Garoppolo. So really looking forward to that. Before I get out of Vegas, I'll probably put a bet on the Niners winning the Super Bowl next year, because you really never know what could happen with a hot quarterback and some believers. And they have some draft picks, and they probably still are pretty long odds to win. But that's all I got. See you later, and we'll be back later